The arrival of the alien fleet. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the alien fleet, their ships cutting through the darkness like shining beacons. Their forms were sleek and imposing, metal surfaces glistening in the cold vacuum. These ships, advanced beyond anything humans had ever seen, seemed to hum with an eerie energy. There were dozens of them, each one larger than the greatest warships on Earth. They moved as one, a united force that felt unstoppable, carrying with it an air of superiority. The aliens aboard these ships were certain of one thing: they had seen it all. They had conquered hundreds of planets, fought countless wars, and now Earth was next. The leader of the fleet, Commander Zorath, stood at the helm of the largest ship, gazing at the blue and green planet that loomed ahead. His sharp eyes narrowed as he thought about the humans, the so-called Deathworlders who called this place home. The stories of Earth's violent environment, its constant dangers, and unpredictable nature had spread far and wide across the galaxy. But the aliens had learned how to handle such challenges. They had learned everything about Earth's military, its strength, and its weaknesses, and they were confident that they knew what to expect from its people. For centuries, the galaxy had watched humanity from a distance. Earth's history was filled with conflict, but also innovation. The humans had advanced quickly, too quickly in some ways. Their technology was still relatively young, but their resolve was unmatched. The aliens had always seen Earth's soldiers as little more than primitive fighters, often disorganized and out of their depth. Yet these humans had managed to survive on their harsh planet. They had become a force to be reckoned with, but the aliens believed that they understood them fully. At least, they thought they did. As the fleet descended toward Earth's atmosphere, Zorath couldn't help but smile. This would be a simple operation. He was sure of it. The aliens had studied Earth's military structure in detail, observing everything from the way soldiers marched to how they followed orders. They understood the hierarchies, the ranks, and the role each soldier played. The humans, in their eyes, were predictable, an army like any other. They thought they knew all there was to know about Earth's defense forces. Zorath's fleet was equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Their weapons were beyond human comprehension, capable of obliterating entire cities with a single strike. Their armor was unbreakable, their shields impenetrable, and yet they still couldn't shake the feeling that something about Earth was different, something that didn't quite fit. But they pushed the thought aside. It was nothing more than a whisper of doubt. They had dealt with countless species, and they were certain that the humans would be no different. The humans on Earth, meanwhile, had no idea that the alien fleet was coming. Their world was busy with its usual routines, cities bustling, soldiers training, and diplomats making deals. But in the heart of Earth's most secretive military base, something was about to change. The elite training camp for Earth's intergalactic defense force had been preparing for something bigger, something that would test their mettle in ways they couldn't even imagine. Within the camp, a group of cadets was about to face their greatest challenge yet. These cadets had been chosen from across Earth, brought together by their remarkable skills, unmatched bravery, and intense training. They were ready for anything except the alien fleet that would soon descend upon them. Among the cadets was one who stood out above the rest, although he didn't look like much. Doc, as everyone called him, was not the typical soldier. He wasn't the tallest, nor the most intimidating. His role was that of a medic, trained to patch up wounded soldiers and ensure their survival. But there was something about him that made others follow him without question. Even the highest-ranking officers respected his quiet authority. Doc had a reputation for being calm under pressure, always thinking 2 steps ahead in situations that would overwhelm most people. While the alien fleet made its way toward Earth, Zorath's mind was still focused on the humans' military. They were just another species, another challenge to conquer. He believed the Earthlings' structure was simple. There were commanders, captains, and soldiers, just like any other military force across the galaxy. Humans followed orders, they'd fought hard, and they lived with the constant pressure of their deadly world. But that was all they had. Zorath didn't believe there was anything special about the humans. They were organized, yes, but nothing that could match the might of the alien fleet. As the aliens entered Earth's atmosphere, they prepared to land near the military base. Their ships descended with a soft hum, their advanced technology allowing them to land without a single sound. The humans below, unaware of the impending arrival, continued their training. But there was one thing the aliens didn't expect. The humans weren't just fighters. They were survivors. And Earth's defense force was built on something far more powerful than Zorath had anticipated. The time was almost here. The alien fleet, confident in their superiority, was ready to show the humans their place in the galaxy. But Zorath was about to learn something he hadn't prepared for. It wasn't just about ranks and orders. It was about what made humans truly dangerous. And Doc was about to prove that leadership didn't always come from a command structure. Sometimes, it came from something much deeper. As the aliens approached the base, a strange silence filled the air. The humans were ready, but little did the aliens know, their assumptions about Earth's military ranks were about to be shattered. The unexpected command. The alien fleet settled silently on Earth's soil, their enormous ships looming over the military base like dark shadows. Their advanced technology made the landing process appear effortless. The soldiers within the alien fleet, their eyes glowing with an air of superiority, were eager to face the humans and prove their dominance. Zorath, still confident in his knowledge of Earth's defenses, stepped down from the command deck of his ship. His soldiers followed closely, their armor gleaming in the dim light. They looked like a force that couldn't be defeated, powerful, efficient, and prepared for anything. But as they began to move toward the base, there was an unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. The humans had not yet responded to their presence, a fact that perplexed Zorath. Surely they had noticed the fleet entering their atmosphere. Surely they would be gathering their forces. But instead, the soldiers at the base remained calm and quiet, going about their training as if they had known the alien fleet was coming all along. It was almost as if they were waiting for something or someone. Within the heart of the base, Doc stood with his fellow cadets, waiting for orders. Unlike the highly trained soldiers around him, Doc wasn't the type to rush into things. He wasn't interested in glory or proving himself. But there was something about the alien ships descending onto Earth that made his instincts flare up. He could feel the tension rising in the air, an unknown threat coming closer. "Doc, are we just going to stand here?" one of his fellow cadets asked, his voice filled with impatience. "Shouldn't we be doing something?" Doc turned his head slowly, his eyes thoughtful. He didn't respond immediately, as if weighing the situation in his mind. Unlike most soldiers, Doc was not impulsive. He knew when to act, and more importantly, he knew when to wait. This was one of those times. "We wait," Doc said calmly, his voice steady, though there was a quiet authority in it that made everyone stop and listen. The other cadets looked at him, unsure. They had expected some kind of plan or command, something more decisive. But they trusted Doc, and so they followed his lead without question. Meanwhile, Commander Zorath and his officers were now in direct communication with Earth's military command. They believed the humans were preparing for battle, but they couldn't understand why their forces had not yet mobilized. The alien fleet was ready, eager to prove their superiority. "The humans must be preparing to fight," Zorath said, his voice thick with pride. "It's only a matter of time before they come at us with everything they have. But it won't be enough. Their forces are scattered. They won't be able to organize quickly enough to stop us." His second-in-command, a warrior named Varnak, nodded in agreement. "We've studied their tactics. Their strength lies in numbers and raw courage, but we know how to break their will. They have no hope." Back at the base, the tension among the cadets was mounting. The aliens were clearly preparing for something. But still, Doc remained calm. He could feel something shifting in the air, a feeling that he couldn't quite explain. As the cadets gathered in a large formation, Ready for whatever might come next, they looked to Doc for direction. Without warning, a sudden loud alarm sounded, cutting through the air. A red light flashed above them, signaling an imminent threat. But instead of panic, there was a strange quiet among the humans. They had been prepared for something like this. Doc stepped forward, his eyes scanning the field. The others instinctively knew to follow. They didn't need orders. They knew what to do because they had been trained for this exact moment. But it was Doc's calmness that guided them. He didn't give an order. He didn't bark instructions. He simply moved. "Form up," Doc called out, his voice carrying with a sense of certainty. The cadets quickly moved into their positions, but instead of following the usual order of a traditional military strategy, they adapted. The training they had undergone on Earth's brutal terrain had taught them how to think on their feet and respond quickly to changing conditions. They didn't need direct orders. They acted as one, instinctively. As the aliens advanced, they were met with a force they hadn't anticipated. A coordinated strike came from the humans. No grand battle plan, no dramatic speeches, just a calm, organized attack that hit the aliens where they least expected it. Zorath's forces were caught off guard. They had underestimated Earth's military, and more importantly, they had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt and think for themselves. As the aliens tried to regroup, Zorath realized with shock that the humans were not following the predictable patterns he had studied. They weren't operating by rank or command as he had expected. Instead, they were working together as a cohesive unit, anticipating his every move. In the midst of the chaos, Doc moved through the soldiers with quiet determination. His actions weren't guided by orders, but by his knowledge of what needed to be done. The aliens had assumed that they understood how human ranks functioned, but they hadn't counted on one thing. Humans didn't always need to follow orders. Sometimes, all they needed was a leader who could think outside the box. Doc's quiet authority, his ability to act without command, had completely disoriented the alien forces. As the battle raged on, Zorath couldn't help but feel the weight of his underestimation. This wasn't just another species to conquer. It was a species that could fight back in ways the galaxy had never seen before. And Doc wasn't finished yet. The aliens thought they knew human ranks, but they were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Sometimes, leadership comes from the most unexpected places. The truth behind the cadets' command. The battle was fierce, and Zorath's alien fleet had already started to feel the strain. What had initially seemed like a simple conquest was turning into something far more complicated. The human cadets, led by Doc, had shown an unexpected level of coordination and determination, throwing off the aliens' advanced strategies. But Zorath and his commanders refused to acknowledge the possibility that the humans were more than they seemed. They believed they had only seen a glimpse of human resistance, not the true strength of Earth's defense. Zorath stood at the helm of his flagship, his sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. Despite his confidence, something gnawed at him. The humans were fighting with precision, not like the disorganized rabble he had expected. They didn't follow typical military protocols, yet their movements were seamless. Zorath couldn't comprehend it. There had to be something more to this. "Commander Zorath, we've lost communication with a few of our forward units," Varnak reported, her voice filled with frustration. "Their strategy is unorthodox. We've never encountered anything like this before." Zorath clenched his fists. He was no stranger to unexpected tactics, but these humans, they were making him question everything he knew. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something about their way of fighting that had eluded him. He had assumed that their military hierarchy was the same as other species, clear and rigid. But here, there was no clear rank structure. Instead, there was an unspoken bond between the humans, a unity that seemed to guide their every move. It wasn't the usual chaos of a resistance. It was as if they had become one single entity, working as a well-oiled machine. Meanwhile, Doc and his fellow cadets continued to hold their ground, fending off wave after wave of alien attacks. Doc was calm, As always, his every movement purposeful, almost mechanical. But to his fellow cadets, it was something far more than that. They could feel the quiet strength that radiated from him. They had trained together, and they had come to trust him not because of rank or orders, but because he simply knew what to do in any situation. He led them not through authority, but through quiet, unwavering confidence. Doc was no typical soldier. In fact, he wasn't even an officer. He was just one of the many cadets who had been selected for this mission. But something about his presence on the battlefield set him apart. His comrades knew that when he spoke, it wasn't out of necessity, it was out of understanding. Doc knew exactly when to move, when to strike, and when to retreat. He didn't wait for permission to act. He simply did what was needed. One of the cadets, Sergeant Emily, who had always been a skeptic about Doc's unorthodox leadership style, had finally come to terms with it. She had always believed that proper hierarchy and commands were the key to victory, but now she was seeing the power of instinctual leadership firsthand. Doc never barked out orders. Instead, he would subtly guide them, sometimes with a simple gesture or look. The result was a perfectly coordinated strike that confounded the alien invaders. As they continued to push back the alien forces, the aliens began to question their own understanding of military command. They couldn't grasp how a group of young cadets, who had no formal leadership structure, could function so efficiently. Where were the officers, the commanders they expected? Why were the humans acting so cohesively? They had studied Earth's military structure in great detail, but nothing they had learned had prepared them for this. Zoreth, the human cadets, they don't need orders, Varnak said slowly, as the realization began to dawn on her. They act on their own. It's like they know what the other is going to do before they do it. Zoreth's face tightened. He refused to acknowledge that these humans had anything beyond what he understood. They're simply coordinated. They'd been trained to fight together. Varnak shook her head. No, Commander. It's more than that. They don't rely on a leader to tell them what to do. They follow something else. The commander remained silent, his mind racing as he tried to understand the humans' tactics. It wasn't just that they were good soldiers. It was that they were somehow better than expected. No amount of technology, no matter how advanced, could account for what he was witnessing. The humans were playing a different game altogether, and it was a game Zoreth wasn't sure he could win. Back on the battlefield, Doc's cadets had reached a critical point. They were making significant headway against the alien forces. The confusion in the alien ranks was growing by the minute. As Zoreth's forces tried to regroup, the cadets, under Doc's subtle but steady guidance, were already planning their next move. Doc knew exactly what was coming next. He could feel it in his gut. The aliens were starting to crack. "We need to take the offensive," Doc said quietly, as he surveyed the battlefield. His voice was calm, as though he were merely stating a fact. The cadets, already primed by Doc's guidance, moved into position without hesitation. There was no panic, no scrambling to decide what to do next. They were in perfect sync. One by one, they struck, flanking the alien forces and taking them by surprise. Zoreth's fleet, now caught in a pincer movement, began to falter. The humans, it seemed, had anticipated every move the aliens made, and it was clear that Doc's quiet leadership was the force behind their success. The cadets weren't just winning because of superior technology or tactics. They were winning because they had something the aliens could never truly understand: unity without command, instinct without instruction. The aliens thought they had grasped the concept of human ranks, but they had miscalculated one critical point. Humans didn't need orders to fight. They needed only to trust each other. And with Doc at the heart of their force, they did just that. As Zoreth watched his fleet begin to crumble, he realized with growing horror that he had underestimated the humans. They weren't just soldiers. They were a force of nature, impossible to predict, impossible to defeat. And at the center of it all stood Doc, a cadet who had shown the universe what true leadership looked like, without ever uttering a single order. The alien struggled to understand. Zorath's mind raced as he watched the battle unfold before him. His fleet, once so sure of their superiority, was now falling back. The human cadets, under Doc's quiet guidance, were overwhelming them. The aliens had underestimated the humans in every possible way, and now they were paying the price. The once proud alien commander could no longer deny the truth. The humans weren't following any traditional structure. They weren't behaving like any soldiers he had ever faced before. Varnak, who had been watching the battle closely, turned to Zorath. Her voice was tinged with disbelief. "Commander, this isn't what we expected. They don't just fight like humans. They fight like a single entity. It's as if they're reading each other's minds." Zorath clenched his fists in frustration. "I've studied Earth's military systems for years. There is no way these cadets are acting without orders. They must be coordinated by someone. But why isn't anyone giving commands? Where is the leader?" Varnak shook her head. "I don't know, but they're winning, Commander. And every time we try to adapt, they adapt faster. It's like they already know what we're going to do next." The alien fleet had already lost several key positions, and the human cadets were pushing forward with calculated precision. Zorath knew he had to act quickly if he didn't want to lose everything. "Get the fleet to regroup," he ordered. "We need to hit them with everything we've got. Full assault. They can't keep this up forever." But as Zorath's orders rang out, the aliens found themselves facing a new challenge. The human cadets had anticipated their move. Within moments, they had flanked the alien forces once again, cutting off their escape routes. Zorath watched in horror as his ships began to fall, one by one. The humans, it seemed, were everywhere. Doc, still calm and composed, moved through the battlefield with the fluidity of someone who had been doing this for years, despite being just a cadet. His ability to anticipate the enemy's next move had earned him the unwavering trust of his fellow cadets. They moved together, a seamless unit, responding not to orders, but to the unspoken understanding they shared. Doc wasn't telling them what to do. He was simply guiding them, quietly and confidently, in a way that no alien commander could ever hope to understand. As Doc gave a subtle hand gesture, his squad moved with perfect synchronization, firing precisely at the weak points in the alien fleet's defense. The aliens were so caught up in trying to understand the humans' tactics that they were losing focus. Every alien ship that fell was a victory for the humans, but it was also a revelation to Zorath. Something deeper was happening here. This wasn't just strategy or military brilliance. This was something that transcended the need for orders. "What is happening?" Zorath muttered to himself as he watched Doc and his team dismantle his fleet with what seemed like little effort. The young humans weren't just fighting back. They were leading without leading. They were acting like they had been fighting together for decades, as though they were born to be in this battle. Back on the battlefield, Emily, one of the cadets, was beginning to understand what made Doc so different from the rest. She had always questioned his ability to lead, especially considering he had no formal rank. Yet now she saw how his presence alone could change the outcome of a battle. There was no need for loud commands or orders. Doc simply knew what needed to be done, and the cadets followed him without hesitation. "Is this how it works?" Emily asked herself as she moved to flank another alien vessel. "Do we need ranks, or is it something more?" The realization hit her like a wave. Doc wasn't just leading by rank. He was leading by instinct. There was no need for orders or formal commands. Every cadet on the battlefield understood their role because they understood each other. Doc's leadership was not about giving orders. It was about unifying the group, guiding them in such a way that they all worked as one. Meanwhile, Zorath's frustration was growing. He had sent wave after wave of ships to attack, but each time they seemed to fall faster. "We cannot keep this up," he said, slamming his fist into the control panel. "These humans are not like anything we've faced before." His ship shook again as another wave of human cadets attacked with relentless precision. The alien commander could no longer ignore the undeniable truth. The human cadets were something else entirely. They were a force united, acting with instinct, trust, and a bond that transcended the need for leadership in the traditional sense. In a final desperate attempt to regain control, Zorath ordered a full-scale offensive, hoping to overwhelm the humans. But as his fleet advanced, Doc and his cadets were already moving to counter it. They anticipated every move, outflanking them at every turn. Zorath watched helplessly as his forces crumbled. The more he tried to assert control, the more the humans pushed back. His mind reeled. How could they know his next move? How were they always one step ahead? And then, amidst the chaos, Zorath realized the terrifying truth. The humans didn't need a leader to tell them what to do. They were not waiting for orders. They were following something deeper, a connection that made them far more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced. Doc's ability to lead was not about rank. It was about the bond between the cadets, the trust that ran deeper than any command could create. Zorath could feel the weight of his defeat settling in. The humans had won, not by overpowering him with technology or strategy, but by defeating him in a way he had never imagined possible. They had beaten him with something far more powerful than his alien fleet: unity, instinct, and trust. The final showdown. Zorath's mind buzzed with confusion and growing fear as he watched the human cadets dismantle his fleet piece by piece. No matter how many times he ordered his ships to regroup, they were always outmaneuvered. Each time they thought they had the humans cornered, the cadets simply adjusted, countered, and struck harder. The alien commander's pride was slowly crumbling, as he had never encountered an enemy like this before. And yet, the truth was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the skill of the humans that was defeating him. It was their unity, their ability to think as one. "Commander, we need to pull back," Varnak shouted from her station, her voice filled with panic. "We cannot win this. Their tactics are beyond our understanding." Zorath stood frozen, staring at the screen in disbelief. His fleet was being systematically destroyed, and no matter what he commanded, it seemed like the humans were always one step ahead. He had thought the simulation was a test, a controlled environment where they could demonstrate their superiority. But now it felt like a nightmare. These young cadets, barely out of training, were outsmarting and outmaneuvering him at every turn. He had expected to see a clear hierarchy in the humans, a system of ranks and orders that would make them predictable. But instead, he had found chaos that worked. There was no higher authority giving commands, no chain of command to follow. The humans simply moved in perfect harmony, responding to each other's instincts and making decisions on the fly. It was unlike anything Zorath had ever seen, and it was proving impossible to defeat. On the battlefield, Doc remained calm. His face was set in a determined expression as he led his team through the final push. His cadets, though exhausted, were fighting with a ferocity that Zorath had never imagined possible from such a young force. They didn't fight for glory, for rank, or for orders. They fought because they knew they had each other's backs. They fought because they understood that their unity was their greatest strength. Doc didn't speak much during the battle. There were no grand speeches, no rallying cries. He simply moved, and the cadets followed him like shadows. The way he led wasn't about shouting orders or taking charge in front of everyone. It was about subtle gestures, small decisions that seemed insignificant to outsiders, but meant everything to his team. And in that quiet leadership, the cadets thrived. As the alien fleet regrouped for one final assault, Doc knew it was time to end this. He had seen enough of Zorath's tactics to know that the aliens were running out of options. They were starting to panic, and that panic was their weakness. "Emily," Doc whispered, turning to the cadet beside him. "Get to the command ship. We're taking Zorath down." Without hesitation, Emily nodded and sprinted off, already knowing what Doc wanted. The plan was simple: infiltrate the command ship, disable its weapons, and capture Zorath. The rest of the fleet would collapse once their leader was taken out of the equation. It was a move that no one, not even Zorath himself, could anticipate. Back on Zorath's flagship, the alien commander had grown more desperate. He had sent every available ship to engage the humans, yet it wasn't enough. The humans weren't just fighting. They were studying him, learning his moves, and exploiting his weaknesses. And now, it seemed they were about to strike at the heart of his operation. "Commander, they've breached the flagship," Varnick reported urgently, her voice shaking. "They're inside." Zorath's heart sank. How did they? But he didn't need to finish the question. He knew the answer. The humans had done what he thought was impossible. They had gotten past his defenses without him even realizing it. Meanwhile, Doc and his team had infiltrated the flagship. They moved swiftly, silently, taking out the alien guards with ruthless precision. Doc's mind was already focused on the next step. The cadets were so in sync that it felt like they were reading each other's thoughts. Every movement was calculated, every action planned in advance. It was as if the entire team had become one mind, one purpose. As they reached the command center, Doc motioned for the team to halt. They stood in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. Zorath was in the center of the room, barking orders at his remaining officers. His face was red with frustration, his anger boiling over as he realized that his fleet was on the verge of collapse. Doc stepped forward, his presence commanding without a word. The cadets behind him fanned out, positioning themselves around the room, ready to make their move. "Zorath." Doc's voice was calm, almost too calm. The alien commander whipped around, his eyes wide with disbelief. "It's over." Zorath's hand instinctively went for his weapon, but before he could reach it, Emily and the other cadets had secured the room. The command center fell silent. Zorath stood frozen, surrounded by the human cadets who had somehow managed to breach his flagship and defeat his fleet. The battle outside had stopped, the remaining alien ships floating aimlessly as their command structure collapsed. Zorath had failed, and the humans, without a formal leader, without a commanding officer barking orders, had won. As Doc approached, he finally spoke again. "Your fleet isn't going to make it out of here. Your war simulation ends now." Zorath's face twisted in disbelief and anger. How did you?" His words faltered as he realized the truth. "You're out of moves," Doc said simply. "The humans don't need ranks to fight. We need each other, and that's something you'll never understand." With that, Zorath's fate was sealed. The aliens had lost, not because they were outmatched in firepower or strategy, but because they had underestimated the power of human unity, the strength that came from working together as one. And that was something that no alien race, no matter how advanced, could ever defeat. The unexpected victory. Zorath's mind raced as he sat in the alien command center, now filled with human cadets. His once proud fleet was in complete disarray, and the shock of defeat had begun to sink in. The alien commander struggled to comprehend how this had happened, how a group of young, untested human cadets had so thoroughly crushed his superior forces. They had breached his flagship, captured him, and now his entire fleet was in chaos. Nothing had gone according to plan. The human cadets were everywhere, moving with quiet confidence as they systematically took control of the alien ships. The fight was over, but the real victory had only just begun. The galaxy would never be the same after this. "How did you do it?" Zorath muttered under his breath, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. "You were just children. We thought we understood you, but we were wrong. So wrong." Doc, the quiet leader of the cadets, stepped forward. His face was calm, almost serene. It was the same expression he had worn throughout the battle. He didn't speak to Zorath with anger or malice. Instead, he exuded an undeniable sense of power, a power that came from understanding what truly mattered: unity, teamwork, and the ability to think outside the box. "It's simple, really," Doc said. "You thought we needed orders. You thought we needed ranks, but what we needed was each other." Zorath scoffed, still unable to fully grasp what had happened. "You call this together? You don't even have a real leader. You don't have a single general giving commands. It makes no sense. How could you possibly defeat me and my fleet without order?" Doc smiled slightly, his eyes gleaming with quiet pride. "We don't need one leader," he replied. "We just need trust. Each of us knew what needed to be done, and we did it. When we're united, we don't need someone barking orders at us. We think for ourselves and move together as one." Zorath felt a growing sense of anger and frustration, but he couldn't deny that Doc's words rang true. The cadets had defeated him without ever faltering. They had acted as a single force, each of them moving in perfect harmony with the others, anticipating each other's actions, covering each other's weaknesses. They had worked together so seamlessly that it almost seemed like they were all reading from the same playbook. Doc's team didn't wait for orders to act. They made decisions as they went, adapted to every twist in the battle, and communicated without speaking a word. It was the exact opposite of what Zorath and his fleet had been taught to value. The aliens had placed so much emphasis on hierarchy, structure, and chains of command, and yet the humans had shown them that victory could be achieved without any of that. For the first time, Zorath questioned everything he had known about war. Could it be that the key to success wasn't rigid control, but the ability to trust each other and adapt to changing circumstances? Could it be that the humans had something far more powerful than just advanced technology or brute force? As he sat in silence, trying to make sense of the situation, Emily, one of the cadets, approached Doc. She held a small data tablet in her hands, her face grim as she glanced at Zorath. "We've taken control of the flagship," Emily reported. "The rest of the fleet is deactivated. We've won. But there's something else. They're going to send reinforcements. A much larger force is on the way." Zorath's eyes widened, his heart racing. "Reinforcements? You think you've won? There's no way you can stop the full might of my fleet. You." Doc cut him off, raising a hand to silence him. "It's over, Zorath. We already have everything we need. And we're not done yet." Zorath's confusion deepened as he watched Doc signal to the other cadets. They moved quickly and decisively, securing all the key systems of the alien flagship. In moments, the humans had control of the most advanced military ship Zorath had ever seen. They hadn't just won. They had seized the very heart of the alien war machine. With the flagship under their control, the human cadets could now dictate the next move. Zorath was powerless, surrounded by his defeated fleet, while the humans were preparing to launch the final phase of their plan, taking the fight to the heart of the alien empire. "You've just made a grave mistake, Zorath," Doc said quietly, his voice now full of authority. "You may have underestimated us, but now you'll learn that you've underestimated humanity itself." The alien commander's mind reeled with the implications of Doc's words. The humans weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for something greater. Their strength didn't come from firepower, advanced technology, or overwhelming numbers. It came from their bond, their unwavering belief that together they could achieve anything. As Zorath looked around at the cadets, these young humans who had just crushed a galactic fleet, he realized that he had been wrong about everything. The humans weren't just a species to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would soon learn just how dangerous they truly were. The final move. Zorath sat in the alien flagship's brig, his once imposing presence now a shadow of its former self. He had been stripped of his command, defeated, and humiliated. The reality of his situation was sinking in. His fleet, his people, his pride, all shattered by a group of young human cadets who had no business defeating him. He had underestimated them at every turn, and now he was paying the price. Doc stood outside the brig, his calm demeanor never wavering as he gazed out into the vast expanse of space. The human cadets had taken control of the flagship and were now preparing for their next move. The fight wasn't over yet, but it was clear who had won. "We've done it," Emily said, her voice filled with awe. She had been part of the team that infiltrated the alien flagship and captured Zoreth. Now she stood beside Doc, watching the cadets continue their work. "I can't believe it. We actually beat them. We've got their fleet under control." Doc nodded, his eyes focused on the view outside the ship. "It's not over yet. We still need to secure our victory." Emily frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "We've won. The fleet is ours, and Zoreth's finished." Doc turned to face her, his expression serious. "We didn't just come here to win. We came here to change everything. We came here to show the galaxy that humanity isn't something to be underestimated. We're not just another species in the universe. We're a force." As Doc spoke, a wave of realization washed over Emily. This wasn't just about defeating one alien fleet. This was about sending a message that the galaxy would never forget. "We're not just defending Earth," Doc continued. "We're defending all of humanity's potential. We're showing the galaxy that we can do more than survive. We can lead. We can overcome anything." Zoreth, hearing their conversation through the walls of the brig, clenched his fists. He had thought his fleet was invincible. He had believed that humans were nothing more than a primitive species, barely able to understand warfare. But now he was learning the hard truth, that humanity was far more than just a force to be reckoned with. They were a revolution waiting to happen. Doc walked up to Zoreth's cell and stared at him through the energy barrier that separated them. The alien commander looked up, meeting Doc's gaze. For the first time, he saw something he hadn't seen in any other species, a quiet, unshakable confidence. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't the bluster of a conqueror. It was the calm of someone who knew they were on the right side of history. "You don't understand, do you?" Doc said softly. "This isn't just about Earth anymore. It's about the future of the galaxy. We're not here to conquer. We're here to lead." Zoreth growled in frustration, but he didn't respond. His mind was a whirlwind, trying to comprehend the enormity of what had just transpired. The humans had done the impossible. They had shattered everything he had believed in. "I never should have underestimated you," Zoreth muttered, finally accepting the reality that had been laid before him. "No one should," Doc replied. "But now you know. Humanity isn't just a force to be feared. It's a force to be respected." With that, Doc turned and walked away, leaving Zoreth to stew in his defeat. As he moved through the ship, he looked around at his fellow cadets, who were securing the alien technology, dismantling the enemy forces, and preparing for the final phase of the operation. The humans had already begun to reorganize, taking control of the fleet with the precision and efficiency that had won them the day. But the true victory, Doc knew, wasn't just about taking over ships or defeating aliens. It was about changing the way the galaxy viewed humanity. The universe had seen human strength in action, and they would never look at Earth, or its people, the same way again. As the fleet began to move toward its next destination, the vastness of space stretching out before them, Doc couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was only the beginning. Humanity had proven that they could not only defend their world, but take charge of their own destiny. They were no longer at the mercy of other species. They were shaping the future, and as they sailed through the stars, the galaxy's perception of humanity had shifted forever.